Greetings, everyone. This is Coach Charlene. You are truly loved and appreciated. So, my name is Charlene Johnson, and I am a leader in a well known organization. And I wanted to bring perspective. I heard a quote the other day by leaders, one of our regional leaders, and he said that, sometimes we have to seize the moment, but then there's other times that the moment chooses us. And so I truly believe that I have been chosen for this moment to share my stories and to share perspective with this whole incident, challenge, systemic racism of over 400 years. And so that is what I'm going to do in these series of videos. I'm going to share some of my experiences as I pursued my leadership journey. So, first of all, I want to thank you for joining. And I know that this is not a comfortable topic to talk about, but it needs to be talked about. I was looking at a quote from Martin Luther King, and he said, "The moment that we stay silent is really the moment that we die on the inside of us." So, when we don't say anything, when we don't speak up, then that gives permission to whatever it is that's going on. So we want to make sure that we are finally sick and tired of being sick and tired. I like to use that phrase because when you really think about what happened, when we saw the murder of George Floyd and all of the multiple others of my brothers and my sisters, it is enraging, it's outrageous, it's unbelievable, and we can't even believe that we all had an opportunity to witness that. So I'm so happy, in a sense, that now people are starting to awaken in something that we have been dealing with for our whole life. And so that's really what the attempt is for my videos. My videos are designed to assist and to share stories, because in this moment, this chosen moment, I believe that if you can hear some of the stories that people have had to face, that it will give you a totally different perspective, even of them as a person and the situation. So that's my aim and that's my attempt. And I encourage every one of you guys to be open to listen to another person's story. You may not be able to walk in my shoes, and I can't walk in yours, but I can share stories with you. And you can see my perspective of the different things that I've had to walk through, fight through, lean into, in spite of, love in spite of, and all of the wonderful things that we do to be able to keep going and not give up. So, um, when we share stories, I just want to say this really quick, because when you share stories, there's several things that happen. Um, you can bring perspective, you can encourage, you can motivate, you can also disrupt, because stories are intended to do all of that. Because a lot of times when you hear a story, it's that person's personal journey, and they're being very vulnerable when they tell it. Just like in my facility, I've had to do some listening sessions, and listening sessions are designed to hear, for everybody to hear the story of another, so that we can make a connection in that way, whether it awakens us, it disrupts us, it frustrates us, it inspires us, whatever it does, that's what stories are intended to do. So that's the way that I am going to use this atmosphere to introduce a few stories that I've had during my leadership journey. So, right now, I am a manager, and I love what I do. I love people. I have always loved people. Now, when I was a kid, I don't think I was in that same place, because I was super shy and I did not like even speaking in front of people. So I've had a major transformation in my life. And so, anyway, let me just start jumping into some of the stories. So, I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, and what I can remember is that the Caucasians were on the west side and the African Americans were on the east side. So we were segregated. And the schools were pretty segregated. And I think they had started to start doing some desegregation, but really not much at all. And that is what I kind of grew up in. And so in school, I graduated number 8, I think out of 250 something it was. And there were no resources at all for me to go to school. I really wanted to go to school. And I know my parents didn't have the finances for me to go to school. So I'm sure that was a heavy burden on them as well. But there was nobody, no counselor, no one that helped guide me. The school didn't have resources because a lot of times when you think about communities and disparities, there's so many disparities that are out there because of the systemic racism that we face, that the money is not put into our schools, into our communities, and things like that. So there was no money. So I was at the mall one day and I was walking around, just pondering, what am I going to do? When I grow up, so to speak. And then I was in the mall and I saw the sign, United States Army, $25,000 for Army College Fund. And I'm telling you, I think I was in the 11th grade at the time. I went in, I signed up, and it was some kind of early entry program. And I wasn't with my mother or father at all. I just kind of was on my own little journey and signed the paperwork. Really didn't know what I was doing, you guys. But I do believe that that was a godly intervention. And so went and finished school. And then I got out of school and then they called me. They were like, "Hey, are you ready? In 2 weeks, we're going to be going to the Army." So it was really devastating actually for my family because we are a very close family and we didn't even spend the night over other people's house. So for me to like leave the city to go somewhere that I know no one at all was really a big, big risk. And I thank God for that risk because it was something that I needed to do. And so I went into the military. Now here I am. I get thrust into this 35 bed uh, unit where it was all women of different ethnic backgrounds, ethnicities, nationalities, all of that. And I was in a total culture shock, like for real. But we had to move from being civilians to soldiers because we had to look out for each other's back at that point. Because when you're in a war, you're not really tripping. You just thinking about, guarding your buddy and making sure your team um, deal with the enemy, and you guys have to be like a unified front. So anyway, I learned a lot while I was in the military. And so I got out of the military because I was then ready to go ahead and start my nursing journey. And I went to a nursing school. And while I was doing nursing school, there was I think it was my last year in nursing school. I was cleaning this lady up. She was a Caucasian woman, and cleaning her up, her hair was all over her head, and she was looking a little wild. So I knew her family was coming. So I wanted to make her look pretty so that, she could be presentable for her family. And so I went to doing that. And as I was washing her up, she grabbed my wrist, and her fingernails were so long and it felt like knives in my wrist. And she said, "Get your hands off of me." And she used the N word. Now, I'm a young nurse trying to make this thing happen. And she says these horrific words to me that I had never really thought about or even been called at that point that I can remember. And she's got me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it was so painful. But then this thought came in my mind was like, you know what, just put a pillow over her head. Because, that's where the anger starts raging because somebody tries to degrade you and humiliate you like that. And of course, because my mother and my father were awesome parents that taught us how to love in spite of, that love, that angel in me came out and said, "Hey, I heard this voice say that could be your mom." Totally changed my perspective. Then I had to move into that area of actually loving in spite of, which was really difficult, even as a young person, but I did it. I did it. That means that my parents did a good job teaching me how to love in spite of. And so I appreciate that because it could have been a whole different trajectory, to tell you the truth, but it wasn't because I was called to that moment. And so here I go. Okay, I'm done with that. Get her all pretty. She gets to see her family. That's it. I'm done. But I'm sure I'm wounded some, but I was able to kind of get past it and be okay. And then I got a job after I finished graduation at a really big institution down there in San Francisco. So I was like, wow, this is pretty awesome. I'm a new graduate. I'm a brand new nurse. Let me go get me some clothes. So I dressed up in my whites and had on some white clogs, and I was looking like a nurse. And so I got up to my unit, you guys. And my first day there, as I was putting my things up, this lady, she was a Caucasian lady, blonde hair, blue eyes, and she looked at me and she kind of had this little snarky look on her, and she goes, "Oh, you must be housekeeping." And I'm telling you, I was like, okay, now the one side of me wanted to take care of her, but I didn't. I did not say anything about it. Definitely recognized while I was there in that facility that there was a disparity. There was not that many African American nurses there. It actually was only three of us out of a whole 200 people. So definitely they have some work to do there with diversity. So anyway, I cruise and come up here to Sacramento. But those different incidents, and that's just a few of them that I've named, are happening. They're happening every day. Every day of my life, I have to think about my children. I have two sons and a daughter. I have to think about them because it's in the back of my mind, you guys, every day that I wake up, that a cop may pull them over and do something with them if they say the wrong thing or whatever. And the reason my senses are heightened over this is because of what we see in the media and because we have a personal experience with this. And my daughter was headed to work. I had just bought her a car, and her car didn't have back license plates on it. She just had the temporary sticker on it. So no big deal. We're not even tripping off of it that it was going to be a problem. She heads to work. My son's in the car with her, and her friend, my son now, he's huge. He's tall. He's like 6'5". And at the time he had really long dreadlocks. And so they get pulled over, and he's asking her questions. Why don't you have a back license plate? And she's trying to tell him, hey, my mom just bought me this car, and here's the sticker, and da 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 da. And the unfortunate thing is they told them to get out of the car. Now, at this point, there's about 4 or 5 cop cars out there. They tell her and my son and everybody to get out. And they sat them down on the ground. Very humiliating. But when my son got out, because he's so tall, that, I mean, one of them just like put his hands on his hip, on his guns, as if, oh my goodness, it was like this fear that he had, and total humiliation in front of thousands. It felt like thousands of people, I'm sure, to my daughter. It was right in front of her place of employment, total degradation. And so the reason why this is a problem and why we need to be able to listen to the stories of another, especially right now, just like I've been telling everybody, is that there is a fire in the African American community. We need people to run and help us. And I see that that is what's happening, because you see all races are protesting, everybody speaking up. We got white sisters and brothers and brown sisters and brothers all banding together to say this must stop. And so, but I want it to be clear that it does happen still today. When we come to work, we still have to show up in our true authentic self. And some of us that are not in that healed place right now are stepping into our organizations, our jobs, with some hurt, with some anger, with some wounds from the past that has to be healed. So we have to pay attention to that. And that's why I believe truly that you need to start listening to another person's story. I would encourage anyone at all, to have some conversations. Don't be afraid of the conversations. The conversations are super important, because sometimes people just don't understand. Like this one thing that has been a big issue for a minute is when we say Black Lives Matter. And the thing is, we all know that all lives matter, but if all lives matter, then we would not have to say Black Lives Matter. When we can witness on TV a murder taking place in front of everyone. And when we can look at all of the statistics and the data and the history of our people and what has been happening, how the disparities are going, and how African Americans are dying at a greater rate, then we know that there is a problem. There's challenges. There's something going on. So, what I need as a peer is to say, hey, I acknowledge that. I acknowledge that there's problems in our world today. I acknowledge that there is systemic racism going on. I cannot not look at this and call it what it is. So that's important for you to acknowledge it. You acknowledge it first. Another thing that you can do is be open when people need to talk. Be open if you say something wrong, if you say something inappropriate. Be open to say, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I did not mean to be insensitive. I did not mean to say that, because things will be said and that can set someone off. And so it's very important for you to also, all of us have implicit biases. All of us do. Certain of us want to be with a certain group. That's just how it is. But there's other people that have those mental constructs that have been deeply embedded into them and groomed in that way. When you have a child that can begin to use the N word and things like that, that is trained behavior. And so we have to do better. We have to do better. And I truly believe it. If everyone checked themselves, you're the only person that can introspect to think about something, and you can hear yourself say it before it even comes out of your mouth. Some things are better not said. I mean, not saying anything. You're better off not even saying anything when you cannot say something that's going to edify and that's going to comfort and that's going to exhort. So I'm encouraging you guys today to check yourself, check your implicit biases, check yourself, listen to your thoughts and see if you are saying things that could possibly be inappropriate. And then pull it back. Don't do it. Because I tell you what, I think just like how racism can be learned, I believe that it can be unlearned. And I really know that it can be unlearned when you talk about transforming and renewing your mind and you becoming the best version of yourself. And so that's my little tidbit for this particular segment. I'm encouraging everyone to not be afraid, to be open to be open to hear the stories of your friends, of your family, because they probably need to share. Now, some people are not going to want to share their story because it is very painful and it's very hurtful. And that's okay. Allow people the space to be upset, to be angry, to be wounded or whatever, because believe me, us as a people, we are loving people. And in order for us to, I mean, just really think about it. I was going to say something, but I'm going to say something else. Resilient. We are a resilient people. We have endured 400 years, starting with slavery, all the way up into this systemic racism, but yet we still can love in spite of. Yet I still can take care of a patient and treat that patient with dignity and respect. Yet I can have a conversation with you and I can truly say, hey, I love and appreciate you and mean it with all of my heart. See, we're very resilient. So that is the key to success, is to be resilient in your life, but not to ignore, no longer squash down those feelings that you have. You know, there's people that are here that can help. And so I'm one of those people. So if you need to conversate with me, if you want perspective, if you want to talk, I am totally here, because I am going to be a change agent in this moment, because I believe that I have been chosen for this moment to share the different stories that I've encountered and to help bring perspective and to open up a safe space for all of those that need to talk and need to get things off of their chest, so to speak, so that healing can come forth, so that we can begin to be really what I believe God, what I believe Martin Luther King, and all of those that fought so strong for justice to be served. So I hope you enjoyed that, and I will be doing a series of videos, and I will talk to you later.